Power is supposed to protect. Wealth is supposed to shield. But what happens when the family of one of the world's most wanted men becomes the target of international prosecution? Jessica Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, built CJNG into a dominant force. Yet courtrooms in Mexico and the United States would begin closing in on those closest to him. His wife, Rosalinda González Valencia, was arrested in May 2018 in Zapopan on money laundering charges. His son, Ruben Oseguera González, or El Menchito, was extradited to the United States in February 2020. His daughter, Jessica Oseguera González, was arrested in Washington, D.C. that same year for sanctions-related violations. Was this coincidence or a deliberate strategy to dismantle a dynasty from the inside out? Tonight, we investigate the rise and legal unraveling of a family empire. Subscribe now for deeper investigations into power, legacy, and the reach of international law. Behind the public image of Jessica Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, stood a figure far less visible but no less significant. His wife, Rosalinda González Valencia, a woman whose name would surface repeatedly in financial investigations tied to CJNG. While headlines focused on armed convoys and mountain hideouts in Jalisco, authorities in both Mexico and the United States were tracing a different battlefield, one rooted in bank transfers, corporate filings, and sanctioned business entities. Rosalinda González Valencia was publicly identified as part of the González Valencia family, several of whose members were linked by the United States Department of the Treasury to Los Quines, a criminal organization described as a financial arm associated with CJNG. Under the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Designation Act, multiple relatives were sanctioned, freezing assets and prohibiting financial transactions under United States jurisdiction. The question that began to take shape among investigators was simple yet explosive. Was the true engine of the empire hidden not in the mountains, but in the accounting ledgers? On May 2018, Mexican authorities arrested Rosalinda González Valencia in Zapopan, Jalisco, on charges related to money laundering, marking one of the most direct legal strikes against the inner circle of El Mencho. Prosecutors alleged that she had participated in financial operations connected to the organization, accusations that positioned her not merely as a spouse but as a key figure in sustaining economic infrastructure. In September 2018, she was released following procedural rulings by a federal judge, a development that ignited debate over legal technicalities and the limits of prosecutorial evidence. Yet, the story did not end there, because in November 2021, she was arrested again for allegedly violating the conditions of her prior release, reinforcing the determination of Mexican authorities to pursue financial accountability. Official statements from federal agencies emphasized that targeting monetary networks was essential to weakening the operational capacity of CJNG, signaling a shift from visible confrontations to institutional pressure. Analysts noted that financial management within major cartels often requires trusted insiders, individuals capable of overseeing investments, shell companies, and cross-border transactions without drawing immediate suspicion. The sanctions imposed by the United States Department of the Treasury against members of the González Valencia family underscored the international dimension of the case, revealing how economic enforcement tools can operate across jurisdictions. For years, public perception framed El Mencho as the commanding presence. Yet the legal proceedings against Rosalinda González Valencia suggested a more complex structure in which family ties intersected with financial oversight. Each arrest, each sanction, each courtroom appearance chipped away at the image of invulnerability that had surrounded the family name. What emerges from the documented record is not a portrait of glamour, but a portrait of scrutiny. where every transaction becomes a potential liability under international law. The broader implication is difficult to ignore. When authorities move beyond the battlefield and into the banking system, the reach of enforcement expands dramatically. If the wife of the alleged cartel leader could be arrested in Zapopan and sanctioned across borders, then the protective wall around the family was thinner than it appeared. As we shift our focus from the financial strategist to the next generation, a new chapter unfolds, one centered on a son once portrayed as an heir apparent and the legal storm that would redefine his future. If Rosalinda González Valencia represented the financial pillar of the family, then her son Rubén Oseguera González, known publicly as El Menchito, was widely portrayed by prosecutors as the operational successor to Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, or El Mencho. Born into a surname already linked to expanding criminal investigations, El Menchito entered adulthood under the shadow of an organization that had rapidly grown into one of the most scrutinized networks in Mexico. In January 2014, Mexican authorities arrested him in Zapopan, Jalisco, announcing charges that included organized crime and firearms-related offenses, marking the first major public blow against the inner family circle. His detention immediately drew international attention, not only because of his lineage, but because United States prosecutors had already been building a case that alleged his involvement in coordinating large-scale drug trafficking activities. Over the following months, legal proceedings in Mexico became increasingly complex, with court rulings, appeals, and procedural disputes shaping his custody status. For observers, the recurring question was unavoidable. Was this the fall of an heir, or merely a temporary setback in a larger succession plan? In June 2015, he was briefly released due to a court ruling citing insufficient evidence, a development that ignited public debate about the resilience of cartel influence and the strength of judicial safeguards. Yet that freedom proved short-lived, as Mexican federal forces rearrested him soon afterward on separate charges, reinforcing the government's determination to keep him in custody. Meanwhile, prosecutors in the United States filed indictments accusing El Menchito of directing cocaine and methamphetamine trafficking operations on behalf of CJNG, elevating the case from a domestic prosecution to a cross-border legal battle. The narrative shifted decisively in February 2020, when Mexico extradited Rubén Oseguera González to the United States, transferring him into federal custody to face charges in an American court. Extradition in such high-profile cases is not routine, and legal experts emphasize that it signaled deep cooperation between the two governments in dismantling leadership structures. In federal court filings, United States prosecutors described him as a high-ranking member of CJNG, alleging that he exercised significant authority within the organization. Court proceedings unfolded under intense scrutiny, with the case framed as a pivotal effort to sever the generational continuity of a cartel dynasty. The symbolism was powerful. The son of the most wanted man in Mexico standing before a judge in the United States, facing allegations that could carry decades of imprisonment. Analysts observed that succession within criminal organizations often depends on familial trust, yet legal exposure at the international level can fracture that continuity. The extradition of El Menchito not only removed a potential heir from the operational landscape, but also demonstrated the expanding reach of transnational law enforcement. For years, speculation suggested that he was being groomed to inherit leadership, yet the documented record reveals a trajectory defined less by coronation and more by court dates and custody hearings. The collapse of that anticipated succession highlights the vulnerability of even the most insulated family structures when confronted with coordinated legal action. As his case progressed through the United States judicial system, the broader question lingered. Can a criminal empire sustain itself when its next generation is entangled in international prosecution. With the son facing trial abroad and the mother confronting financial charges at home, the image of an untouchable family enterprise began to unravel. In the next chapter, we turn to another member of the family whose legal troubles would further underscore the reach of sanctions and the limits of inherited protection. While the legal battles of Rosalinda González Valencia unfolded in Mexico and the extradition of Jessica Oseguera González, known as El Menchito, moved through the courts of the United States, another member of the family entered the spotlight under very different circumstances. Jessica Johanna Oseguera González, often referred to in media reports as La Negra, was arrested in February 2020 at Washington Dulles International Airport in Washington, D.C. A moment that signaled how far the reach of international enforcement had extended. Unlike her brother's case, which centered on alleged operational leadership within CJNG, the charges against Jessica Oseguera González focused on financial transactions connected to businesses previously designated under United States sanctions. Federal prosecutors alleged that she engaged in transactions with entities that had been identified by the United States Department of the Treasury under the Foreign Narcotics Kingpin Designation Act. The allegation did not revolve around battlefield command or public displays of power, but around paperwork, ownership structures, and the flow of money through corporate channels. This distinction underscored a broader strategy employed by authorities, one that targets economic lifelines rather than visible confrontation. In June 2021, Jessica Oseguera González entered a guilty plea in federal court to engaging in transactions with a designated narcotics trafficker, acknowledging violations of United States sanctions law. The plea marked a pivotal turning point, transforming the narrative from accusation to admission within the framework of the American judicial system. In September 2021, she was sentenced to time served and placed under supervised release, a conclusion that closed the immediate chapter, but left lasting implications for the family's legal exposure. Observers noted that sanctions enforcement represents a powerful tool in dismantling financial networks, particularly when family members operate businesses that intersect with designated entities. The case of La Negra demonstrated that lineage alone does not shield individuals from scrutiny when financial systems cross international borders. The question resonating through policy circles was clear. If even the daughter of the alleged leader can be detained and prosecuted abroad, what does that reveal about the limits of inherited protection? Unlike the mythic image of untouchable dynasties, the documented record shows a pattern of accountability extending beyond the principal figure. Each legal action against a family member reinforced the message that international law can penetrate domestic boundaries, especially when financial transactions enter the jurisdiction of the United States. Analysts have pointed out that sanctions are designed not merely to punish but to isolate, cutting off access to banking systems and legitimate commerce. For a family at the center of a vast organization, that isolation can have cascading effects across corporate structures and investment channels. The convergence of arrests in Zapopan, extradition in February 2020, and prosecution in Washington, D.C., illustrates a coordinated approach that moves across geography and legal frameworks. Rather than confronting a single individual, authorities appeared to target the connective tissue of a family network. The broader implication is not about spectacle, but about systemic pressure, where financial compliance laws intersect with criminal investigations. In this unfolding narrative, the traditional image of a protected inner circle dissolves under the weight of court filings and sanction lists. What remains is a stark contrast between the projection of supreme power and the reality of judicial oversight that spans two nations. As the cases of Rosalinda González Valencia, El Menchito, and Jessica Oseguera González demonstrate, the web of international law can tighten around even the most guarded families. The final question that lingers is perhaps the most sobering of all. Can absolute authority within an organization truly shield loved ones when financial systems and extradition treaties operate beyond its control? The story of Rosalinda González Valencia, El Menchito, and Jessica Oseguera González reveals a sobering truth. Power at the top does not guarantee protection for those below. Arrests in Zapopan, extradition in February 2020, and prosecution in Washington, D.C. demonstrate how international law can penetrate even the most insulated family structures. The fall of a dynasty is rarely sudden. It unfolds through court filings, sanctions, and extradition treaties. If you want continued analysis on the shifting landscape of cartel power and global enforcement, subscribe and stay with us for the next investigation.